Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. Hi, I am Megan Abbott. I'm the owner and founder of Trifecta Collective, a holistic health practice. And this is my co-host, Shannon Callery, who is our head practitioner within the practice. And today we are diving deep into parasites. And, once again, this is a topic that hits pretty close to home to both of us. Something that was overlooked in my care for many years. And then even when it was starting to be addressed, it wasn't addressed, we'll say, the most effectively to really address the problem. And even when it was addressed, proper care and precautions weren't taken after the fact. So what we're going to do today is really dive into what are parasites and when and how do they become a problem? How do we really address them, and how do we find them, and how do we address them? And then what are some things that we kind of need to do before and after to make sure this work is really effective? And then we'll finish up with some maintenance care to make sure you don't have to go through all of this again, because this is really a one and done kind of situation if you do this right. So Shannon, you want to start with just like what are parasites? Why are they a problem?
Yeah. So, we all have bugs in our gut, especially parasites. Like we do all have some parasites in our body. It's just about the imbalance or like the overload. Like if we have too many, then they start to cause different issues in the body. So, we can get parasites through so many different ways, through the foods that we eat, the water that we drink, when we're traveling to different countries, and even just like when anything that's like throwing our system out of whack. So like when we're stressed, that lowers our defense mechanisms, and it's easy for our body to get like overgrowths or imbalances of different things like parasites. Why they're an issue? Well, when there is an imbalance of them. So pretty much the easiest way for me to put this is they throw our body out of whack or out of balance. So like we have our foundational health when things are working right, like our body knows how to process them out. But when we get too many parasites in our body, they can cause like, disruptions in our digestion, even within our mental health. I'd say that's like another really big thing. Parasites are like little creatures in our body. That's like the best way I like to describe them. I mean, they hold on to emotions, they carry emotions. There's so many different things about them. They're just very like quote unquote human like. So yeah, they kind of go in our body and they really throw things out of whack, like especially our digestion.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's backtrack here to like why they become an issue, because I think this is a really important distinction and is so often misunderstood. So yes, we all have parasites. And it's fine. Like our bodies are meant to be able to handle having parasites in our body. However, there's really like these two situations that Shannon talked about where they become an issue. One, if we get an external parasite issue. So the most common case with this is going to be if you travel to a place, especially certain third world countries, and you get a parasite that your body cannot process. That is very foreign to our system, very foreign to our body, and our body can't really handle this and can't really deal. And then in which case that is obviously an issue. That is not the case for most people, though. Most people do not experience that. I have had people in the practice like experience that, and it is different. It feels different. Like it's a little bit of a different scenario. How we address it is pretty similar, but it feels different and it responds a little bit differently. But really, the real reason most people have these issues is because we undergo this chronic stress and we undergo chronic exposure to toxins, heavy metals, mold, environmental toxins, and parasites feed off of toxins. And if we've got a toxin overload issue, we're probably going to have a gut overgrowth issue. That's probably also going to include parasites. Yes, bacteria, yeast, fungus can also come along with that, but absolutely, parasites love toxins, and so they heavily feed and replicate off of these toxins. And this is a big reason why we never recommend just doing a parasite cleanse, because you're missing the bigger picture as to why and how they got there. Now, of course, chronic stress can play a role. You mentioned like lower stomach acid production, like excess hormones, like our liver just being overburdened in general is going to lower our defense systems, defense mechanisms. Chronic viral issues, like all of these things can absolutely play a role. But this toxin overload piece, I really want to emphasize that piece in particular, because this plays such a massive, massive role in why so many people end up having a significant parasite issue that causes symptoms here.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, just to add on to that, like there's almost always, I don't think I've ever seen a case where we're just dealing with parasites. Like there is most often always co-infections that go along with this. And then, like you said, the toxin overload in the body, huge thing. Especially like mold, parasites love feeding on mold. And whenever we do an episode about mold, we'll dive into that a little bit more, but it's never just like one. We're not just ever going to focus on parasites. There's always going to be more than that.
For sure. So let's dive into these symptoms. So mental health symptoms, like Shannon mentioned, is huge. I would say, and I don't know if you relate the most to this, but for me, like this is how I relate the most. And I feel like we've seen this with clients more so than anything else, but anxiety. Anxiety really just like, and it, I have a long history of anxiety. Like I've been medicated for anxiety. Like I know what this feels like. And it's like an internal unrest. The constant brain loops, just this like never feeling at ease, never feeling at peace. Like even doing mindfulness stuff, like even doing some of this work, like having that underlying piece still there is a huge part for many people, not everyone, because parasites can show up very differently for everyone, but a huge piece for a lot of people. And once again, just because you have anxiety doesn't mean you have parasites. There are other major factors that can play a role here. However, if someone does come to us with anxiety, you better believe we are definitely going to take a look here and do a deeper dive into our parasites, at the very least playing and contributing to some of these anxiety symptoms. But yeah, so and then let's kind of run through a bit some big other ones.
Yeah, and I do want to say, I feel like people who struggle with depression too, I do see that come up, especially when we're doing the parasite work. The anxiety for sure gets like heavier. And if you do struggle with depression, I would say those two things hand in hand kind of show up together. But yeah, as far as other symptoms, there's so many things for parasites. So lower belly bloat, like kind of like that, really just like, I was going to say pregnant belly, but really just like that lower part of your belly when that's bloated, that is a really, really big sign for parasites, as well as anal itching, sleep issues, sugar cravings at night, specifically skin issues. If you pay attention and you notice that any of these symptoms get worse around like the full moon, that's another really good sign that it has to do with parasites, or could be parasites.
I want to talk about the full moon here real quick.
Yeah.
Because I thought this was super woo-woo until I read the science behind it. And then I was like, oh my goodness, this makes total sense here. So parasites are more active during the full moon. And here's the reason why. So when the full moon comes up, our body's natural production of melatonin drops. This is like what our body does no matter what, whether you have a parasite issue or not. So that our melatonin drops. So you may notice, once again, whether you have parasite issues or not, that your sleep maybe isn't as deep or isn't quite as good right around the full moon, specifically like a day or two leading up to the full moon, including the night of the full moon. And then, so when our melatonin drops, our serotonin increases. Once again, this is just something that naturally happens in our body. So when the serotonin increases in our body, parasites also have serotonin receptors. So with the increase in serotonin, parasite activity also increases. And this is why this can be an issue. And this is why you'll often see like, do it during the full moon, do a full moon cleanse, like doing all these things. Because yes, parasite activity is a little bit higher during the full moon. Really, it's because this melatonin drop, increase in serotonin, and then the parasites also have serotonin receptors, which increase their activity around this time.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's such, and I know it does for anyone listening, it does feel like really woo woo. I used to think that too, but I encourage you to maybe do some research on your own, and dive into it because it's a thing, and start to pay attention to the full moon too and see how you feel around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that. The So some of the other things, just in general, like GI issues. So, a stomach gurgling, gassy, that lower belly bloat. Those are some pretty common things with parasites, or like other gut infections, like we talked about, co-infections. Crazy dreams at night, or really vivid dreams, is another really big one. Grinding your teeth, excessive boogers, or like hard clumpy boogers. That's another one. Histamine related issues, night sweats is another big one. Nutrient deficiencies, because parasites love to steal our nutrients. That's kind of how they thrive in our body. Vomiting, bedwetting, eye boogers, eye floaters. So like if you see like little black spots in your eye every now and then, that's another indication.
Or if
Uh,
you wake up and you have like the little like crusties in your
yes.
eyes, that's a common sign too.
Yep. Um, what else? We got drooling. I think we already talked about hormone imbalances. And there's actually, people can have spots. I say this because this is what I'm still dealing with. I'm actually still working through this. But you can have spots that show up on your body that actually look like ringworm spots. They can be like red with like a white center in it. Um, those, I know that was a huge list of different symptoms. But yeah, those are like the main things that we kind of see with parasites.
Yeah, and just for the histamine reactions, just if you're unfamiliar, I mean, allergies, even seasonal allergies, excessive seasonal allergies, allergies like excessive pet allergies, dust allergies, like rashes, hives, sometimes like triggering autoimmune, like eczema, psoriasis, some of the gut autoimmune issues are also commonly related to a parasite issue. Ulcerative colitis is the biggest one that comes to mind for me. But other like gut related autoimmunity issues can also be related here. And yeah, and the thing is, like with these, when we list all of these symptoms, it's not like if you drool in your sleep, like that doesn't mean you have parasites. It's really about, let's look at all of your symptoms all together here. And then next we're going to dive into how do we test and how do we actually look for parasites in the way that we do, and what do other people do, and why we disagree with that. And so it's really about all of these things together. And this is why when we look at holistic health, it's not about one or two things. It's not just about the labs. It's not just about your symptoms. It's really looking at everything all together to get a good idea of what's going on inside your body.
Yeah. And I cannot like stress this enough, how important it is to look at the entire person, like talking about symptoms, testing, all of these things together. And we'll dive into testing in a second here, and I'm sure you experienced this, Megan, but like when I was going through all my stuff, trying to figure out what the issue was, first of all, parasites weren't even like brought up because they never showed up on the like standard testing for them. And just no one was putting like the two pieces together, which we see so commonly with all the people that we talk to. Like it blows my mind. I'm like, how are we not talking about this whole person and like everything that we're dealing with? So we'll dive into some of the testing here now.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, I took 5 GI, stool tests, and
Yeah,
parasites didn't show up for me
same.
ever.
Yeah.
I did parasite work. Parasites were included in every single stool test I took, and they never came up. So it was deemed cool. I do not have parasites. Parasites are not an issue for me, and I had most of these symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. Serious. I mean, same here. Tons of stool testing. Parasites, never a thing until it got too far, and like, yeah. And it was just continuously missed. So
Yeah. So when we look at GI map or a gut zoomer or some sort of stool testing is the most common way that parasites are tested for. And parasites have I mean, you got to catch them at just the right moment in time to be able to catch them on a stool test or a blood test. A direct blood test. We will talk about blood testing, other blood testing that we use that has been shown to be very effective as a tool. But it's very, very challenging. I mean, if now here's the other side of the coin. If you do have one of a parasite show up on a blood test or some sort of stool test, chances are you have a pretty significant parasite issue. And I'll say I had a pretty significant parasite issue, and it never showed up for me. And I mean, we can't. Well, maybe we'll get a little bit more graphic later here,
Yeah.
as far as how what happened when we started addressing these properly. But yeah, I mean, they never showed up for me and they don't show up for most people. So just because it doesn't show up on a direct blood test or a direct stool test, like, please don't think that automatically rules out parasites, because it does not.
Yeah, and that's the point of too, like coupling with symptoms that the client is experiencing, because between the two things, like, we can get a pretty good idea of what someone is dealing with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so stool testing is, I would say, the number one thing that they use to look for parasites, which, they sometimes they don't show up there. They're sneaky little creatures. But what we do is we like to run blood work no matter what. That's like our first thing that we do to kind of see what's going on in your body. And there's three markers that we look at. So there's eosinophils, monocytes, and basophils. And what we're doing is kind of looking for different patterns within those markers. And that helps give us a pretty solid indication of whether or not there's parasites in your body. It's not always, they're not always going to show up there. Like we said, if you have other things showing up, like other co-infections, some bacterial issues or whatnot, or like heavy metals or just other toxins, there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be parasites along with that as well.
Yeah, and so these three markers are on a CBC, a complete blood count with differential. Now, they're on the differential part of that, which is really, really important. And I'll say, by and large, most physicians run this test annually. If you're in the US and going through Quest, more often than not, it's not run. To be really honest with you, I don't know. I don't know why, but that is the pattern that we have seen over the very many years here in our practice. But it's a very basic test. It should absolutely be covered yearly by insurance. I mean, it's so standard. And that piece gives us a lot of insight into your gut overall. Looking at the neutrophils piece, like, shows us a lot as far as like other gut overgrowth. The lymphocytes part of that shows us really good insight into viral issues that may be going on, whether that's chronic or acute. And then the monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils, really looking at those, and those trending on the higher side are going to be the best indication as to, do we likely have a parasite issue. But I should have mentioned, if you've got some pretty serious toxin overload issues, we're going to address parasites as well, because we know that parasites also hold on to these things. They feed onto the toxins. And if we're going to address the toxin piece, we might as well go ahead and address the parasites, because they're going to release more toxins into your body and they're going to feed off of them as we go through this process. Why would we not do it all at once to help you heal? Let's do all the big work one time, so that once again, you never have to do it again, is really kind of the game plan here with us.
Yeah, and the nice thing too is, which we'll talk about here in a second, but some of the supplements that we'd like to use for this, some of these herbs are, what's the word? They cover multiple things. Like the things that we use for parasites, we also kind of use for bacteria and yeast and other things in the body. So it's kind of all coupled in one. And it's not like we have to add in a ton of different products to address this, which makes it really nice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And if our defenses have been down anyways, which if you are chronically sick, you got some defenses that are down, then yeah, I mean, if we leave the parasite issue alone, you're susceptible to some pretty significant issues reoccurring, especially if you have chronic SIBO, chronic yeast issues, and parasites have never been looked at or addressed. Probably need some parasite work, among other things. But I mean, for me, I mean, I treated my SIBO for so long, and it wasn't until I addressed the parasites that really like the SIBO went away and was gone, and really haven't had to deal with it since.
Yeah, that it's crazy. I also experienced that. SIBO was like my main diagnosis and kind of what all the practitioners and even medical doctors like went after. But yeah, it didn't really get fixed. For me, it was like the underlying thing was the mold and then some of the parasite stuff. But yeah, it's God, when we hear SIBO, you know there's more going on than just bacteria. So
Yeah,
always.
SIBO is a symptom, not an actual issue by itself. Although we do address it, but you have to look at other things
Yeah.
that are also going on here. So yeah, let's talk about some just common just products that are often used, and let's get into some of our protocols.
Um, would you like to take the reins, Megan, going over
Yes.
the full script stuff?
Yeah, so let's start with some of the common stuff. So antibiotics are sometimes used when it comes to this. So once again, yes, the parasites are an issue, but if you only address the parasites, we're missing the bigger picture as to why and how these parasites got there. And also, we're going to talk after I go over this next one, we're going to talk about detox reactions and why you definitely don't want to just dive into some parasite work because you can get really, really, really sick. So, antibiotics can be used if you work with a primary care physician of some sort. That'll often what they recommend. You can get really sick off of them. Once again, if you don't address the larger piece, often the parasite issue will come back. And then, other ones like wormwood, black walnut. There's all kinds of products on the market right now, all kinds of tinctures, all kinds of special like parasite cleansing kind of stuff available out there containing one or both of these products that are often used. And here's the thing. Yes, we also use versions of these products in our practice. However, once again, we never just dive in here. And so before we go over our protocols, because I think what can go wrong is important to cover first into understanding why we do what we do. So when the parasites die, so let's say you just go in and start killing the parasites, few things can/will happen to you. So one, toxins are being released into your body. So when parasites hold on to toxins, whether or not you have a significant toxin overload issue, look, like we're all exposed to toxins. Like we all have toxins in our body. I mean, unless you grow all of your own food, like unless you're like the ultimate nature person and you know where everything is coming from and you live I don't even know where, but you're not breathing in toxins. I don't know who this person is. If you're out there, I'm very envious of your life, but generally speaking, we're all exposed to toxins just living. And once again, our body knows how to handle this. But if we have a parasite issue, these parasites are holding on to toxins. So when they die, they are going to release these toxins into your body. And if your body is not prepared with the resources it needs to bind up these toxins and get them out of your body, you can get very, very sick. And this can look like nausea, this can look like constipation, diarrhea, chronic inflammation, a huge increase in mental health issues, specifically anxiety, but definitely depression is on the table here. Histamine reactions, vomiting, like worse bloating, gas, all of these things are absolutely on the table here. So the toxin piece is a big one.
Yep.
The other like I'd say there's two pieces, but I'd say the one other really big one here is if your body cannot get out the dead stuff in your body, it will sit in your body and it will, once again, it will make you very, very sick. So if you are not having at least 1 to 2 full complete bowel movements every single day before going into this, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to have an issue going through this kind of process and protocol, and you're going to get really sick. You're going to be very sensitive to all of these products, and it's not going to feel good. You're not going to be able to last. I mean, you may not be able to function in your day-to-day life. I mean, I've just heard too many stories of all of these things happening, which is why and I've seen it firsthand too many times, that like, please don't just jump into this. The other piece to this is all kinds of gut overgrowth issues, specifically parasites, but also bacteria, yeast, and fungus, put up protective layers around themselves to protect themselves. This is something that's called a biofilm. So it's a biofilm, and it's basically a protective layer that a lot of times antibiotics, certain products won't touch. And if they are hiding and you're going to kill them, well, when you're done killing them, they can come back out, and you're left with the same issues. I mean, this is huge when it comes to any sort of gut overgrowth issue. And this is a huge piece of why people end up with chronic gut infections, because these things hide. And then especially, this is a huge reason, and I don't know if we talked about this with SIBO, but if you do an elimination diet where you are not feeding these things actively, they are going to hide behind these biofilms. They are not dying. They are not going away. They're just hiding temporarily behind these protective layers. So unless we have to do some sort of strict elimination diet or some version of an elimination diet for symptomatic reasons, which yes, we absolutely do when we need to, we as a practice do not recommend doing that, because we want to be feeding these things so we can kill them. And we can kill them and we can break down these barriers with biofilm disruptors, and then we can clear them out of the body. Because once again, the whole goal here is one and done. Do a more extensive protocol once, and then do a little bit of maintenance so you never have to go through that again. And that's really the name of the game here when it comes to any gut infection, particularly parasites.
Yeah. And I mean, because it is, like, I'm not going to lie, it is a pretty intense experience. But I mean, our goal is doing all that work that you kind of had just mentioned beforehand to make sure, like, you got to be going to the bathroom beforehand. And it doesn't really matter. Like, we have people who take certain bowel stimulating supplements throughout this, like, because yes, parasites can also contribute to constipation, but we just need to make sure that you're going throughout the process. That's going to lessen some of these detox reactions. So whatever needs to be done to get you to that point, supporting those drainage pathways, like that is all something that we do beforehand to, like, lessen all of these symptoms.
Yeah. And this is why we do prep work. I mean, we do minimum, 4 weeks, I'd say minimum. Usually it's 8 weeks before we do deeper parasite work in our practice, because we see too many people have reactions, like pretty terrible reactions, if we don't do the prep work. And the prep work is really the first phase, the non-negotiable for us, is drainage pathways, like liver detox pathways, opening these up. And this looks like supporting the liver, often supporting the kidneys, using some sort of binders to start binding up some of the toxins in our body and support our body's natural system to get some of these out. It's making sure we are having, at least 1, ideally 2 or 3 full complete bowel movements a day. Often we'll add in lifestyle things, castor oil packs, Epsom salt baths, dry brushing, rebounding, sauna work, like something to really, really ignite these liver detox pathways. Because once again, if we don't, between the toxins and then just the parasite dying and staying in your system, I mean, we're trying to avoid both of those so that you don't get really sick. We're not saying you won't have any reactions, but we can really, really minimize the reactions that someone does have by doing this prep work.
Yeah, it has to be done. That, like you said, that's the non-negotiable. And it's different for everyone too. I will say I've had a couple people come in who it just seems a little bit easier to work on their drainage pathways and kind of move right into stuff. And then there's some people where it takes like 8 or 9 weeks, or it's really different for everyone. But bottom line is you cannot skip this part if you're going to do realistically any type of detoxing. Like this part has to be done.
Yeah, any sort of detoxing, any sort of gut overgrowth, gut killing stuff like this. I mean, and we're going to do a whole other episode on just this topic, but this is a non-negotiable for us. And this is where we start with all of our clients because it is a non-negotiable and it really limits the reactions that someone has going into this. And it makes the rest of the process so much smoother by just doing a little bit of prep work.
Yeah.
And often people feel,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, people feel so much better. Usually, during this prep work, like, oh, I have more energy, like I feel better. My bloating, has subsided. Like my sleep is better. My skin is better. Like, yeah, a lot of these things get better during this process because it's once again, it's your body's natural process. Our body is designed to do this. It's just when it's overburdened, overloaded, defenses are down, that these things don't work as optimally as it should, and we're just supporting the body's natural process through this.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of like this throughout, like feel better in the beginning. And then of course it's gonna be a little rocky throughout the detox. But yeah, that's the main thing is that I was gonna say too, is you feel better during this phase. So why not?
Yeah, exactly. So let's, in our practice, by and large, we use products from a company called from a company called Cellcore. I am going to go over FullScript products because those are available to everyone. If you go to our website under My Faves, we have a link to our FullScript, and we have this protocol that I'm going to talk about in just a moment outlined for you. So you can have access to this. There is a discount on there as well. You do not have to get these products there, but it is outlined there for you, and you do get a little bit of a discount on there if you go through this. We do not use this protocol in our practice. We have other products that we prefer from a company called Cellcore. We don't use them for everything, but when it comes to their binders and a lot of their killing products, specifically with parasites, I mean, there's nothing else I've ever found on the market that comes close to the strength, to our ability to low dose and high dose these things. It also really cuts down on the number of products because a few of their products have combined, like we talked about this biofilms, like they have a biofilm disruptor that also just like helps move things along and just like grabs anything dead and dying, gets them out of there. Their binders are amazing and can be taken with food, which is very unusual. Usually you need to take binders away from everything else because they are non-selective binders. And yeah, I mean, they have their specific parasite products, specifically Para-3. That's not exclusively what we use, but that's a big one that we use. I mean, if we can go really low dose. You can start with like 1 drop a day and work up to whatever we need to, whatever we can, while managing symptoms. And because it is a liquid, not the best tasting, not the worst tasting either. I've tasted some fitness supplements that were far worse than this product, but so Cellcore is something that we do use in our practice. If you ever are looking for access to this, please reach out to us directly because there's a couple of things we have to do in order to get someone access to that. So if you are interested, please reach out to us directly, social media or email info@trifectacollective.net. All right, so let's go through. If you go to our FullScript, once again, if you go to My Faves, there's a link to our FullScript. It's under supplements. It's a wholesale supplement distributor, is what FullScript is. And we do have this whole protocol put together here for you with instructions. I'm not going to go over the actual instructions, but I'll go over the products here quickly so you get an idea of why we use them and what they're actually for. Once again, one of the reasons we use Cellcore is because it cuts down on the number of products that we're able to use. So this is a heftier protocol. It is 6 products. And I don't quite recommend cutting any of them out. They all have a lot of value in here. But once again, you should also do prep work. There is a prep work protocol on there as well, liver detox pathway support. So that is available too. So the first one is paracetamol, and this is an anti-parasitic. It's a pretty just overall anti-parasitic. It has some of those ingredients that I mentioned, and it's just a general anti-parasitic. We have TEDCA. TEDCA is one of our favorite products for the liver. It really helps to open up the liver to help with like detox pathways, specifically the conversion to get the toxins out of the body, like phase 2 of detoxification. It also helps with digestion. It helps produce bile and it helps with bile flow, which is really, really important. One product that I personally always have on hand, just because it's so good. And there's nothing else, when it comes to liver support, I don't think there's anything that quite touches it. Yeah, I don't think there's
Pretty
anything.
strong.
Yeah, it's
pretty strong.
It is very strong. So be careful when you first start that. There's therabiotic interface, which is a biofilm disruptor. Once again, we want to have a biofilm disruptor because all of these things, these microbes can hide. We want to make sure we're breaking down these biofilms. A biofilm disruptor helps to break those down so we can get access to all of the microbes that we want and need to kill. We also have Clear GI, which is kind of a combination of a bunch of things. This acts as a binder. So once again, when these things die, they release toxins into the body. We're helping to bind those up. This also helps just move things along, the just general GI tract. Because once again, one of the concerns is these things die and they get stuck. And that can make you really sick. So this is going to help move all of that along to get it out of your body so that you are not getting sick. We have an HCl supplement, and this is a pretty mild one, but this helps to limit reproduction. Low stomach acid level is a huge factor when it comes to gut overgrowth issues in general. So incorporating this specifically with parasite work, especially with this specific protocol, because it's not quite as strong as what we use in our practice by and large. Very effective still, just not quite as strong as what we use. Having that HCl support, I think, is very, very highly valuable. If you don't include it while you're doing parasite work, absolutely you should include it after the fact. And then we have a berberine complex, which is going to help with inflammation. It's also going to help with blood sugar regulation. Inflammation can absolutely increase when we're doing any sort of big protocol. And then definitely blood sugar dysregulation can happen with parasites, all the cravings that can come along with that. And not that you need to completely cut out sugar or, stop all of these cravings, but I mean, we want to nourish our body with good, whole, nutrient-dense food and not eat a whole bunch of sugar. And if you eat some, that's totally fine. You're feeding them and making them more active, which is fine. Just more to kill. But by and large, we want to just manage that.
Yeah. And something else I want to add on to this too. I know it's not part of this protocol, but we talked about the drainage support before this. And then if you do choose to do something like this, it's very important to do a little rebalancing and rebuilding after, just with like some pre and probiotics. And I think we have that on Full Script as well under like rebuilding. But yeah, that's also a big part that people forget. And it is important to put that good bacteria in there to protect yourself in the first place. So just don't forget that piece.
Yeah, and I mean, let's dive into this a little bit more because I think this is so important, and is not talked about enough. So, and this goes with any time you kill anything in the gut. Really, you should build the gut back up to a good spot. And for us, what this really looks like is, so after we've cleared out and done a lot of this parasite work, which can last typically for us, anywhere between like 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the person, depending on what we're dealing with, and what else is going on. But that's usually a pretty good estimate. So once we clear everything out, I mean, we've done a lot of killing, and that is also very stressful on the body. And we don't remember, the whole goal is to limit stress and leave the body in a really good spot so that we never have to do this again. So we want to make sure after the fact, all of our protection mechanisms are back up. And this includes having good stomach acid levels. This is really huge, just to make sure that these are in a good spot, because this is a huge protection by and large against all gut overgrowths. A probiotic. So we want to start getting some good stuff in there. A really good, like good and gentle one that we often use in our practice is called Restore Flora by Microbiome Labs. This is a great product. It's a little bit of everything, and is gentle. There are many types of probiotics out there. I'm not saying this is the only one to use, but this is often a good starting one when you're reintroducing some of the good stuff after a more intensive killing protocol. Then, so the probiotics are important. However, what is more important is that we're feeding all of the good stuff. So this is where prebiotics come into play. So often we'll recommend something like a Mega Pre, which is a prebiotic blend, which is really designed to help feed and grow all of this good stuff. A lot of times we'll also recommend like a multi-strand fiber supplement, once again, just to continue to really focus on the feeding of all the good stuff, because this is a huge protection. And then a lot of people also have like leaky gut, intestinal permeability that comes with any sort of gut overgrowth issues. I'll also say, at least in our practice, we never just address leaky gut. There's always some other stuff going on here. You always need to ask the question, why? Why and how did this happen? Not address just the thing that is going on, but why and how did it happen? And so we'll often use something to like heal and seal the gut lining to make sure that stays in a good spot. We want to make sure our other digestive enzymes are in a good spot. We want to look at stress moving forward, the nervous system, making sure our nervous system is regulated, because that plays a really big role. And then any other nutrient deficiencies. I'd say with people who have a lot of a significant parasite issue, often a zinc and copper imbalance and or deficiencies often comes into play. It's not with everyone, but it's absolutely something we look at for all of our clients who have had a parasite issue, and want to make sure that ratio is in a really good spot.
Yeah, definitely replenishing nutrients after, whether that's using like a prenatal or a multivitamin, a good quality one, is super important. And then you can also maintain this with food after too. So like, good prebiotic foods like apples, really fibrous veggies like lettuce, if you tolerate like kombucha or fermented foods, okay, you can add a little bit of that in every day. And that's a good way to, just get it in through your diet, as opposed to, supplement fatigue. We've all been there, taking too many supplements. So that's a really easy way to try and maintain that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just long term, those foods are super important to just have in on a regular basis. If you do extensive killing in your gut, I would go for the supplements for a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, not as a replacement, as a
Yeah.
maintenance after the supplements. Sure,
Yeah.
add all that food in. Yeah, you definitely need the potency from the pro in prebiotics and to rebuild your gut. When you do that type of killing, can't skip that part.
Yeah, super important, and just it's really important for your long-term health. And before we talk about maintenance, often we'll get the question, are we going to see anything while we're going through a protocol like this? And the question, the answer is maybe. Some of us do, some of us don't. I've been through plenty of parasite protocols where I've seen nothing. I've also been through parasite protocols where I see a lot. And there's a lot that is being expelled from my body. None of it is alive. I will say that, if that makes you feel better. But yeah, you may see some stuff. Some of it may look like worms. Some of it may not. Not all parasites come in the shape or form of worms. For me, liver flukes was a really big one for me. That I often saw. But yeah, there was other kinds as well. But only about 30% of parasites are visible to the naked eye. So just because you don't see anything doesn't mean they're not there. It doesn't mean you're not getting rid of these things. It's 100% possible. You absolutely are. And I just thought of one other thing that I really do want to touch on too. And I don't know if you were going to bring this up or not, but if you're getting ready to pass something, and usually this is like something a little bit more substantial. One of the telltale signs, once again, you may or may not see anything, but one of the telltale signs that this will happen is about 12 to 24 hours beforehand, you'll start getting a rise of symptoms. And for many people, this is often like like big fatigue, a big like episode of emotions, anxiety, depression, just gut feelings, constipation and or diarrhea, like just feeling really miserable. And then you have a bowel movement and it's like a weight's been lifted. And that's really a really telltale sign that you passed something and that something has come out. And it's super, super common.
Yeah. And you can also be some of that like emotional intenseness. It can last for like 2 or 3 days after. I mean, I've seen and heard and experienced myself like passing parasites and then continuing to be like very emotional, almost like weeping emotional for like a couple days after. But then it like Megan said, it's kind of like a weight is lifted off you. It's kind of hard to describe, but you feel different. Like you can feel that something left your body that was not supposed to be there anymore. So
Yes.
yeah, but you won't always see something come out in your stool. And granted, that won't happen every time too. Like we don't get that dramatic of an experience every single time.
No, absolutely not. And yeah, once again, like it also depends on the strength of your products. Like I didn't see anything come out until I did like pretty high doses of para 3. So yeah, I mean, it really does vary person to person. But once again, doesn't mean you aren't getting rid of stuff that your body doesn't want.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up because especially like right now on social media, I feel like parasite cleanses are the hot topic. Like that is what is showing up. And mind you, not everyone is doing them, right? We'll just throw that in there, but everyone is showing like, oh, that like all this crazy stuff left my body. And we don't always see that. That's not always the case. And like when these people show this stuff too, most of them are getting colonics, which is like a type of service that actually like goes in and like clears out your gut, and you can actually like see a ton of stuff that they're pulling out of you. Like not everyone is doing this. So when you see that on social media, like, and then you go do a parasite cleanse, don't expect it to be like that every time because that is not the case.
Yeah. We should also talk about colonics on another episode.
Yeah.
Maybe our liver detox pathway episode. That I think that's a good topic to dive into because I have mixed feelings on
Yeah.
colonics too. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we will. I have other things to add on to that too. So we'll have to do a separate episode
Yeah.
about that.
So yeah, so let's wrap up here with just like some like general maintenance. So once again, the way we do it in our practice is like we do this one big kind of I hate the word cleanse, but like one bigger protocol to do a big sweep. And then as far as maintenance, we usually recommend a week-long parasite cleanse or parasite work around a full moon 1 to 3 times a year. And this is really just as far as like quantity is concerned, it usually depends on someone's exposure and also someone's history. For someone like me, I have a dog. He licks me on my face. He is too cute for me to say no to the kisses on the face. So I do mine 2 or 3 times a year. I also just traveled internationally. So, I probably will do one next month. Just not that I think I got anything, but to be on the safer side, there was some digestive disruption for sure, just traveling and being out of the country. So it would probably be a good idea and beneficial for me to do one, coming up here. So, but 1 to 3 times a year. And once again, it should be 1 week long. I do recommend just some gentle liver detox pathway support beforehand. And maybe this just looks like lifestyle things like start using castor oil packs a little bit more regularly, start taking more baths or whatever modality you would like to use. certainly you can include supplements. I will often include supplements for a week or so beforehand. The TEDCA is always high on my list. And then you're doing the parasite work for 1 week, starting about 3 days before the full moon and about 3 days after the full moon. And then once again, we like to follow up that with a little bit of pro and prebiotic support for about a week afterwards, just to make sure we're getting all of the good stuff back in and then maintain that through food.
Yeah, just main thing is over the full moon is going to be the best time to do that. And then prepping your liver, making sure it's ready. Because if you go, 6 or 8 months or whatever, without doing that, again, like you don't just want to solely jump into the parasite stuff, because that could leave you potentially feeling worse than when you started. So just really putting an emphasis on supporting your liver beforehand. And like Megan said, it doesn't have to only be with supplements. You can do things like Epsom salt baths, castor oil packs, rebounding, whatever floats your boat and you feel the best doing, just make sure to add it in.
Yeah, exactly. And during is also a good idea as well, just to maintain. And if you start to get a little constipated, I do like to have something on hand just to make sure that you are having at least 2 or 3 bowel movements every single day, specifically while doing any sort of parasite, even the maintenance work. This could be magnesium citrate, some sort of bowel stimulator, bowel motility activator is a good one. That's pretty readily available, something with senna in it, smooth move tea. Yep. That's a really good one. So just having all of those tools on hand as you're going through this. But yeah, 1 to 3 times a year, depending on the person, level of exposure, is generally totally fine to make sure you stay in a pretty darn good spot.
Yeah. And maybe we'll do a little social media content around if you do decide to do full moon work next month, because I'm also doing it then. So maybe we'll have to give little updates on how it's going.
There we go. Yeah, Shannon and I can share. And Brendan, our other practitioner, I think may also be doing some full moon work next month too. So we will keep you guys updated. With discretion, of course.
Yeah.
We're not going to just show you everything, but we'll kind of keep you guys updated. If you guys want to join in and do it with us, we'll share some of our tips and tricks and tools that we use, supplements that we're taking, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, be sure to follow us on all social medias. Do you have anything else, Shannon, before we wrap up? Okay, cool.
No.
So yeah, thank you for joining us. This was a fun episode on parasites. We love parasites. Parasites is always a very fun topic for us to cover. So thank you for joining us. Please, we are a newer podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Let us know if you have comments, questions, concerns, podcast topics. Be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using to listen to us. And we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.